Hi students, this is going to be a video on plant hormones, or also known as plant growth factors. Now, plant hormones are any chemical substance that either inhibits, accelerates, or alters plant growth. And we're going to be learning 5 different hormones. So the 5 different hormones we know as cage. Okay, so A being auxin, C cytokinins. The A in this one is abscisic acid. G here is gibberellins. Gibberellins. And the E here is for ethylene. Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with auxin. Okay, let's start off by talking about auxin, which is a really important plant hormone for plant growth. We're going to start talking about cell elongation, as well as how it affects, or what role it plays, I should say, in tropism, specifically phototropism and gravitropism. Okay, so let's pretend that we have a whole bunch of cells here. And this will be your vacuole. We're just going to draw them 3 layers thick. We'll draw the vacuole. Big central vacuole. Okay, and so let's pretend that this is a stem. When you have, should be a different color for this. So when you have light coming in, okay, and shining onto that cell, the auxin is actually going to migrate to the shady side. Okay, so that is your shady side. And then what it's going to do is it's going to activate a protein pump, or a proton pump, I should say. And that's going to lower the pH. So activates proton pump, and you lower your pH in the cell. This is going to activate an enzyme. Why is this really important? So that enzyme is going to loosen up some of these cell walls. They're going to get a little bit more loose. And water is going to rush in to your cells. As water rushes into your cells due to the change in the cell and the breaking down of some of that cellulose within that cell wall, we are now going to have the cells on the shaded side become elongated. So imagine you've got more cells here. Okay, so these are going to become elongated. So imagine here, right? Sun is shining down. These are starting to become elongated, and that is going to create a bend. So these are actually now going to bend. And that is why, so again, this is where you have your light. Okay, and that is why the plant is going to bend towards the light, and that has to do with the auxin concentrating on this side. That would be your phototropism. Let's talk about gravitropism. Okay, so I'm just gonna erase this. Now let's imagine that you have a root cell, a root here, and that's going to be your root cap. Okay. And gravity, right? So this is gravity is going to pull that root down. Now the auxin goes against gravity. So our auxin are actually going to accumulate on the opposite side. And again, remember, right? So if our stem is here, our root is here, and all the auxin is going to be on the opposite side of the gravity. It's going to elongate those cells. And now what's going to happen is that this is going to start to bend down. Again, all due to that cell elongation. Okay. The other thing that I want you guys to know about is that a lot of the times you have a buildup of auxin in the meristematic tissue, right? So that apical meristem. And that's going to allow the plant to go straight up. Okay, so the next plant hormone that we're going to be looking at is cytokinins. And this looks a lot like cytokinesis. Okay, and cytokinesis, spell that correctly, is the end part of mitosis, right? And so if you start off with one plant cell, and we're just going to draw a nucleus in that plant cell, obviously it would not be that big. At the end of mitosis, right, but right before it divides, so let's say we are in the telophase and we have that cell plate forming, right? So the actual splitting, when it actually splits apart and that cell wall completely forms, that is cytokinesis. And so cytokinins is what stimulates plant growth, plant division, whereas auxin makes the cell itself larger through expanding that vacuole. Cytokinins actually divides those cells. If you were to take a piece of root, right, they call that a callus, so not just a root, but a piece of plant tissue, apical meristematic tissue, right? And so we're just going to say that this is your callus. And this is just a bunch of undifferentiated cells. And if you were to add a whole bunch of auxin, right, that hormone to your callus, okay, so auxin added is going to increase, so increasing auxin is going to create root growth. Now, if you had, again, another piece of callus, undifferentiated cells, and you add a whole bunch of cytokinins, you're actually going to create shoot growth. The cytokinins and auxin, they work hand in hand with each other. And so if you have a root, remember our root example from before, and so let's pretend that it's our root cap, right? And if our oxen, which is working against gravity, is on that side, what we have here is actually our hormone cytokinins. And that is going to prevent these cells from elongating, while the auxin is going to promote the cells from elongating. And so then you're going to get your root cap, right? And your root that's going to point down. And again, this is gravity. Auxin makes plants grow tall, whereas our cytokinins will encourage plants to grow laterally, wider, right? And specifically if there is sun coming down, right? So you have that light, the different types of wavelengths of light. Now, if you have a shaded plant, it's going to block that light. And so the plant, as we talked about before, it gets a little leggy, right? And it's actually going to switch from having auxin dominating to now our cytokinins dominating, and it's going to have that lateral growth so that we can grow around the obstruction. And you see a lot of this in forests where you have plants that are trying to get out of the way of a shady region. Okay. The other thing I wanted to quickly talk about is how is it getting transported to the rest of the plant, right? And so your cytokinins, and again, this is going to be our root cap, okay? And this is going to be your meristematic tissue. And right in the middle here, okay, this is going to be your xylem. And so our cytokinins are being produced here in the meristematic tissue. So we're going to say apical meristem. And it's actually going to travel up through the xylem and get transported to the rest of the plants. Okay. All right, so the next hormone that we're going to talk about is abscisic acid. Or ABA. And this is going to be our stress hormone. Okay, so anything that would stress the plant out. We're going to talk about low water, low temperatures, low light, right? So the daytime light is getting shorter. And so this really stresses the plant out, and it sends signals to the plant to stop growth. It will send a signal to the branches to stop growing. It will send out, they originally thought that it would send out a signal to the leaves in order to have the leaves drop. So this is where we get the word abscission from. But that wasn't the case. They figured it out that it is a different hormone. It is important for seed dormancy, right? So if you have a seed that falls off the tree, abscisic acid is what is going to put that seed into dormancy in the fall. And then that's slowly going to break down through winter until spring. And then the springtime, once it's completely broken down, the little seedling can then germinate. It is transported through vascular tissue, both the xylem and the phloem. Okay. Okay, and the other thing that it's also going to do is it's going to stop fruit formation on the tree, right? Again, and that's that whole That's the whole conserving energy. It also is going to stop transpiration. Okay, and so in times of drought, right? So let's say that your soil moisture levels are very, very low. That is actually going to trigger an increase in ABA, in uracilic acid. And so remember that we have our leaf here. And let's say that we have, these are our guard cells at the bottom, okay? Now, in times of drought, they're going to close up these stoma in order to save on water loss. Okay, so the next plant hormone that we're going to be talking about is gibberellins. And gibberellins have a variety of things that they do for the plant. So they control dormancy. Okay. They are going to induce flowering and also aging. And they're also going to increase size of fruit. And we'll talk a little bit about how it does that. All right, so where did this come from? A long time ago, they had these rice paddies and they had these rice plants that were growing in these rice paddies. And they were growing very, very fast, very, very quickly. And then they would fall over because they got so leggy, so very, very long. They could not support their weight because they grew so fast, and then they would die. And what they found was that there was a little fungus that had attached to the plant that had increased the gibberellins, the hormones inside the plant, to increase that fast-paced growth. And so from there, we've learned a lot about this particular plant, and it is used often in by farmers in crops. So let's say you have, okay, so this is just a field here, and we have a little seed. I'll draw my little seed here in blue. So here's my little seed, and it's dormant, and it's in the ground here. And so what farmers can do is they can add a whole bunch of your gibberellin onto that seed. And normally the seed might be overwintering, so it would need a certain temperature, right? And so it's going to counteract that dormancy and it's going to allow it to grow. The next thing that we have here, again, is let's say, right, that we have our plant. We're just gonna draw it here, and it has no flowers yet. Well, again, if you add a whole bunch of gibberellin, right, spray it onto our plant, it's actually going to promote flowering. And it's also going to increase the size of our flowers. And then the last thing, if you have a fruit, let's say a grape, right, and you spray it on the grapevine. So let's say these are my grapes here. Okay, so it does make grapes, this fruit, larger. And it allows it to grow much better than it would without the hormone. And it also doesn't grow the seeds inside. And so then you have these very seedless, tiny little, not even seeds, they're just little things inside of the grape. Okay. Okay, so the last one we're going to be talking about is ethylene. Now this one is pretty cool because this is the only one that is a gas. And so how they first discovered this is that they had these lamp posts in the ground. I'm not very good at drawing a lamp post. So imagine this is my lamp post. We have a flame, right? And this lamp is giving off ethylene gas. And next to it, right, you have these trees. And what they noticed on the trees, that they developed twisted trunks. They were thickened. And their leaves fell earlier than the rest of their neighboring plants. It all had to do with the ethylene given off by the lamp. So farmers use this a lot to spray on their crops. And so we know ethylene gas is what is given off by fruit, right? So let's say you've got a banana, right? So we'll have a bunch of bananas here. Okay, these are my bananas. And we know you're not going to buy bananas and only one is ripe, right? They're usually all ripe together. And so as they ripen, right, they're going to be giving off this gas, this ethylene gas. And that signals to the other bananas, hey, it's time to ripen. We are at the right age and our seeds are all developed, right? And of course, with bananas, it doesn't have seeds because we've cultivated them, but this goes for any of the fruit, right? So even if you've got yourself an apple, right? So let's say you have an apple here. It is also going to give off the ethylene gas to signal to the rest of the apples on the tree, hey, it's ready to ripen. Now, farmers will go out and spray this gas, this chemical, onto the rest of their plants so it's easier for them to harvest. They're going to want to make sure that all of their produce, their crops are all ready to be harvested at the same time. The other thing, if you have a monoecious plant, right? So a plant that's either a male or a female, so not dioecious, but monoecious, ethylene gas will signal whether it's a male or a female. So ethylene makes female flowers, where our male flowers are signaled by auxin. Now, the other thing is that as auxin decreases, it actually signals cell death, right? And so if you have something where the something happens to the plant where the stomata all close up, right? So there's a period of time where there's a drought and all the stomata are closed up. What happens is the gas builds up, the ethylene builds up and starts to sacrifice parts of the plant by saying, hey, we need to conserve energy, and it'll start to either drop leaves or start to kill off branches. Now, the really cool thing is that if you were to put this apple under a glass dome and you were to put a twig, and let's say we had a leaf, right? The gas that's given off by the apple will actually signal the branch to say, hey, we need to drop our leaves. And that is it. So those are the 5 different hormones. Just wanted to come back and say that it wasn't auxin that made our male flowers stimulate flower growth for males, but gibberellins. Sorry about that.